Yeah, give him a gavel, man.
So, can either of you read anything on this page?
Jimmy Chabrier, which is known as barbecue.
I think to demean the department the way you do, I think doesn't reflect the reality.
But it's not demeaning, it's providing facts. Isn't that what Mr. Crow had just talked about, was posing a question and getting facts?
Yeah, is my time up? Seems like my time's a lot shorter than your time. But thank you.
I think you're at a minute 50 over. Isn't that about the same? There were absolutely domestic news outlets that were targeted by GEC resources. $500,000 grant to Nepal regarding the expansion of atheism. Do you have a problem with providing individuals that are not senior officials?
It does send a chilling effect, Mr. Chairman.
There should be a chilling effect for anybody that writes a grant to spend any dollars of we the people of the United States of America.
Did not omit records. We actually did provide a number.
We've got
and
copies.
I
You
do have good
admitted
news.
records that were readily available online. They
And
were
I do
not
have good
classified.
news.
Before we get going, I will be recognizing Chairman of the Full Committee for an opening statement and the Ranking Member of Full Committee for an opening statement. But before I do so, we have one of our members, Mr. Mills here, who has his 9-year-old, Noah, just had a birthday. You wanna come up and see your dad and have him tell you happy birthday? All right. We'll bring him up here.
Yeah, give him a gavel, man.
So,
Mr. Mills.
Hey, buddy.
uh-huh. Happy birthday, buddy.
You say you'd be a future chair? He's turning them. I knew it was coming.
The chair now recognizes Mr. Mills. So, happy birthday, buddy. First, we have the Honorable Richard Verma, Deputy Secretary of State for Management and Resources. Next, we have the Honorable Naz Durakoğlu, who is the Assistant Secretary of the Bureau of Legislative Affairs, which is commonly referred to as H.
It's not just about quantity, it's about quality. And I'm looking at these documents, and it's a pretty thick stack of documents, but now you both have pretty high education here. As I looked at your resume, can either of you read anything on this page? Or this page? Or any of these pages that all look the same? That came from you folks to us. So there are other members on the committee here that have the same level of security clearance. Is there a commitment from your office? We don't want to take you away from your work, but we need to know this information, understanding, and maybe the public doesn't know, but we're talking about someone who I think can potentially be credibly accused of assisting and aiding the enemy of the United States of America in Iran, having regular contact and so on and so forth. Would you commit to a closed-door setting, a closed session with the other members of this committee for that information?
Yeah, let me say two things. One, I'd be careful about just jumping to conclusions like that.
I'm not jumping to any conclusions so I can read.
Well, I think you are. And secondly, I'd be happy to take that back and provide you with whatever administrative information we can and consistent with what the law allows us. But yes, let me take it back.
So can you tell us what the circumstances were, how the department became aware of the allegations surrounding Mr. Malley?
I actually don't have that information, Congressman. I will say I understand we have offered a full committee briefing, and so that offer stands.
And we want more than just your administrative details, sir. It's been 300 days plus.
Congressman, we'll do whatever we are able to do given the pending nature of the investigation.
You know, it's my understanding that the Senate minority, the Republicans in the Senate, are actually holding up some ambassador appointments based on investigations that the majority in the House are conducting on certain issues based on policy disagreements. Can you just, talk to me very briefly about that in some instances of those important appointments being held up?
I have to think a little bit through this, but I can say one person who's notably absent today is our legal advisor, who obviously the L Bureau plays a big role in accommodations and the oversight process as well. The department hasn't had a legal advisor since the beginning of this administration, which is quite extraordinary. Our first nominee had to withdraw. And we have a second nominee who recently had her hearing and was voted out yesterday. But I will say it was against the will of the minority. And
In August of 2021, President Biden made a comment and said that if you just show your blue passport at HKIA, that you'll be permitted to enter and allowed on the aircraft. Is that correct?
Well, I think you know, Congressman, what was happening in August of 2021 at that airport and how dangerous it was.
Deputy
And
Secretary, we are not debating at all. I completely agree with you that it was chaotic. I completely agree with
so
you.
we
I
got
just want to know,
100
did he make
we got
that
out
statement?
124,000
he
people,
make that
including
statement, sir?
6,000 Americans. And the
Deputy
ability to
Secretary,
show a blue
this
passport
is
was
how
very
things get
challenging.
taken out of context and start getting heated up. It's just a simple yes or no. Did President Biden make that comment or not?
I don't know. I wasn't at the department at the time, frankly.
Wait, do you happen to remember? Because he made it clear, if you're a blue passport holder and you show your passport at the gate, that you'd be permitted to enter. That was in a direct quote.
sir, my apologies. We were taking a lot of intake at that time. I actually don't remember the president's comments on that. I just
Understood.
don't.
Well, he did actually make that comment. Now let's go to one more recent incident, an example. The spokesperson, Mr. Miller, of the U.S. State Department made a comment about Haiti and its current disheveled capability of Jimmy Chabrier, which is known as barbecue, taking over with Mencken Khan, G9, and the rest of the actual gangs who have terrorized and set fire and cannibalized individuals. And when requesting support, the spokesman for the State Department said, "We have no plan and or intent to help evacuate and secure Americans." Well, at my own dime and expense, once again, here we go. And here's an example. We'll go ahead and play of what that looks like. These are Americans who had requested multiple times from the U.S. State Department to gain assistance to be able to get them from their actual orphanage, to include the gentleman Mitch Albom, a very well-known author and radio host, who, by the way, is a known and well-registered Democrat. You see, when we care about the safety and security of Americans, we don't look at political affiliations or gender or race or religion or other things which are other descript. We care that they're a blue passport holder, and that's supposed to matter. We went on to not only rescue them, but to also rescue 13 more after that, to include a 2-month-old baby and a 3-year-old little girl who had been hiding and locking themselves in a chapel. Now, I'm puzzled at how the President of the United States and the United States DOS is telling us that they don't have the ability to help and rescue these Americans when private citizens with limited resources can achieve these great feats. And there's other organizations who are doing amazing things. So we can't talk about how the State Department's main objective abroad is to help support and to rescue and to help those abroad in every way, because we've seen time and time again the failures that have occurred. And we see this through the multitude of NEOs that are occurring, through the failed domestic and foreign policies that's leading up to this, to the Americans that are being abandoned. There's a pattern of abandonment that is existing right now, and no confidence in our own government, which is why Americans feel more secure calling private companies than they do actually responding to the U.S. State Department, who does what? Sends them an automatic email and a website. Please go ahead and fill out. But guess what? The good thing is you do get shamed into your jobs, because now all of a sudden you had no intent, no purpose, or no plan to rescue Americans. Now you're sending a charter. That's what it takes to get the State Department to do their jobs. And that's unacceptable. So you need to let us know the resources, assets, and what needs to be done, because we're willing to help that, but we get nothing from you in return. With that, I yield back, and thank you for indulging my questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Chair now recognizes Ms. Titus.
Mr. Chairman, can I respond to that? Or?
Certainly you may.
Yeah, look, over the past 12 months, State Department's helped 70,000 Americans, 70,000 around the world. Not 1 or 2 or 9 or 10, 70,000. We evacuated 1,200 people.
Are you alluding that the 1 or 2 lives don't matter?
No, I'm giving you the quantity
Okay.
and scale of what we've done. We took out 1,200 people from Sudan at great risk. Our consular officers.
I actually commended you on Sudan. Do you remember this?
Mr.
I didn't,
Verma
I
is
didn't see
currently
that.
recognized.
I appreciate that. We took out thousands of people, offered up thousands of seats on charter aircraft from Israel. We are taking people out of Haiti. I appreciate what you've done, Congressman, but I think to demean the department the way you do, I think doesn't reflect the reality.
But it's not demeaning, it's providing facts. Isn't that what Mr. Crow had just talked about, was
look,
posing a
these
question and
people-
getting
these-
facts?
these
There were
people-
people
these-
asking and begging for help.
Sorry. These
Mr. Mills.
these consular officers are doing incredibly heroic work.
And I love what the State Department's
Mr.
doing. I
Verma
admire
and Mr.
them.
Mills, hold on a minute. Mr. Mills, I'm happy to do a second round. If you have more questions, Mr. Verma, you can continue.
No, I think look, I'd love to work with you the budget that you all passed out of here last fall was a 25% cut to the State Department. 25% cut while you're asking us to take on evacuation responsibilities of Americans. We do so much to warn Americans where they're going. Haiti has been a level 4 country where we actually tell people not only not to go, but if you go, our ability to get you out is going to be limited. So I'm looking forward to this conversation with you. I hope we can support the budget to allow us to do things in a more robust way.
The Global Engagement Center does not conduct domestic-focused programming. Is that correct?
They conduct no work in the United States at all.
And in this investigation that they're conducting about this center, have you been forthcoming in letting them know what some of your implementing partners are doing, who they are, and how they're engaged?
100%.
Thank you, Ms. Titus.
Oh, okay. Yeah, is my time up? Seems like my time's a lot shorter than your time. But thank you.
I think you're at a minute 50 over. Isn't that about the same?
I'll go back.
So I certainly tried my best to make it as even as I could here. And thank you for your questions. And Mr. Verma, I do know that as we're speaking about the GEC, there were absolutely domestic news outlets that were targeted by GEC resources. So let's not pretend as though that didn't happen. That 100% happened.
I don't know, is this a question? Because I'm happy to respond to it, because it really was.
It's not a question. We already did a hearing on it with people that are experts on it.
It was I think you're concerned about one of their grantees, but they have strict
I now
guidelines.
recognize Ms. Salazar for her time for questions. And I want to start by going to what I spoke about in length in my opening comments. $500,000 grant to Nepal regarding the expansion of atheism. And I would just start with this question from senior State Department personnel. Do you believe that that is an appropriate use of $500,000 of We the People to expand atheism in Nepal?
Mr. Chairman, I've actually looked at this. I've looked at the grant. I've looked at the materials. That's not what the grant is for, and that's not what the work would be for. And frankly, we would never authorize such a grant to any organization to promote any kind of religion. As the ranking member discussed, this was actually to fulfill a requirement that this committee put forward to defend people who are being persecuted for their beliefs. Governments across the world, as you know, are cracking down, can torture people, lock people up for their religious beliefs.
So you're saying today that no $500,000 grant for atheism in Nepal or divided up in other areas?
I have seen no evidence of any grant to promote atheism in Nepal.
Are you familiar with those that you sent to our committee to answer questions about this grant?
I am.
Okay, and are you familiar with that they answered 140 times over that they just didn't know? They weren't the decision makers on this. They don't know. They don't know. They don't know.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think you have to, I'll tell you what I've done. I've looked at the materials that this grantee in Nepal has used. It was about supporting civil society in Nepal so that they could defend themselves if they were persecuted for believing a particular religion? Or frankly, non-religion. It wasn't religion specific. It was frankly agnostic. It was giving people the right to be safe from persecution, which is exactly the intent of the law.
Let's go back to the original question. Again, as senior State Department personnel, would it be appropriate for the State Department to authorize $500,000 grant of the monies of we the people of the United States of America to promote atheism.
It would not be appropriate to have a grant to promote any religion or non-religion coming from the United States. That's not what the International Religious Freedom Office does. It's not what our Office of Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor does.
Very good. So, Mr. Durakoğlu, would you like to respond to that as well? Would it be appropriate to give a $500,000 grant to promote atheism in Nepal?
No, it would not be, and I concur with the deputy's statements. Could I add a data point to that? You mentioned that the individuals who came up from our Religious Freedom Office were continually saying, I don't know, on a number of issues. These are, I believe, the same individuals that are being requested for transcribed interviews. To be clear, we are actually offering up the individual who would know, the senior officials. So just to be clear from earlier statements, we would like to provide the senior official who actually is in charge of this issue to
We
the
would
committee.
love for you to provide that, but let's not just talk about senior officials. Do you have a problem with providing individuals that are not senior officials?
It does send a chilling effect, Mr. Chairman, whenever you have grant administrators.
Be more
or-
specific, chilling effect.
So, for example, if I am a relatively junior or mid-level person, and I award grants from the Department of State, and I am at risk of being called before a committee or testifying or transcribed interviews, and that's why State Departments over respective administrations have had a cutoff of Deputy Assistant Secretary or Senior Executive Service to come up and appear before you. We are simply carrying on that tradition. I think it's an important one to protect the workforce, frankly, to protect the morale.
The
and
workforce works for we the people of the United States of America.
Right.
And I would say absolutely there should be a chilling effect for anybody that writes a grant to spend any dollars of we the people of the United States of America, whether to promote atheism in Nepal or whether to do a drag show in Ecuador or promote prostitution in Colombia or whatever it might be. There should absolutely be a chilling effect for any person at any level that goes out there and conducts their work in such a manner.
Mr. Chairman, I think we have a disagreement about the facts. And I don't, from what I have seen and what I have reviewed and the transcripts I have reviewed and the grant materials of the organization in Nepal, and I've spent a lot of time in and around Nepal and South Asia, and I know what risk people face. And I think this was exactly the right kind of program to support civil society and protect them from persecution.
Back to the point of this hearing, clearly you disagree with this, but I would say certainly you had plenty of time to prepare for that, given that over the course of 2 years and 10 specific requests for information before your department finally responded with anything, it took you quite a long time to come up with the story that you're presenting to me right now. And the other thing that I would say about that is, as there's a complaint about needing more resources, needing more staff, needing more personnel. Well, imagine if you cut down your workload by 10, by a multiple of 10, how much more manageable it would be if we didn't have to ask you 10 times for everything that we want, whether it's correspondence about a dissent cable to which you all gave out public awards to people that were a part of the dissent cable, or whether it's for information about a drag shows in Ecuador or grants in Nepal or anything else. You could cut that down by 10x if you responded with quality on the first time.
Mr.
And
Chairman,
now I will
we
recognize Ms. Van Dyne
I will
for
say
her
we,
time.
we spent 50,000.
You're not recognized.
We finally received a response from state, though it was not the one that we had hoped. When copies of the redacted information appeared in a news article, state wrote the committee a letter authored by you, Ms. Durakoğlu, close enough, a letter threatening to only share information in camera moving forward. This is completely unacceptable and interferes with congressional oversight. Not only are members of the committee entitled to this information, but none of it was classified. So we'll not be deterred by states hedging, threats, or obstruction, and we look forward to states' full and faithful cooperation moving forward. But in the meantime, we're demanding accountability for states' noncompliance. Can I ask, why did state only provide the committee with cooperative agreements when we asked for a redacted list of all GEC grants? Project grants should have been included, and over 20 GEC project grants are publicly available, and you omitted them anyway. Why?
So Congresswoman, I can take this one. And first off, thank you. My husband's a small business administration employee, so thank you for your work. The work that you referenced by the Global Disinformation Index, if I could just for 1 second.
So the question that I'm asking is, why did you omit records that were publicly made available?
So from our perspective, we did not omit records. We actually did provide a number.
We've got
and
copies.
I
You
do have good
admitted
news.
records that were readily available online. They
And
were not
I do have good
classified.
news for you. We actually are ready to make a production to you all next week.
It took you 6 months to get this far, and you're finally able to get us more than one
I
document.
will say the Global Engagement Center is under investigation by 5 separate committees right
Okay.
now.
I yield back. Thank you very
But
much.
if I
Chairman.
can respond, the Global Disinformation Index that we're talking about, the work that you're referencing happened in 2022. The Global Engagement Center worked with them on a Chinese propaganda project in 2021.
I'm
There's
simply
actually
asking
no-
why we can't get records that we've requested.
You
These
are
records are
next week.
available. Much of it is publicly available, and you have omitted it.
Ma'am, you will get them next week.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
For your questions and responses.
So clearly, this is just a political theater, and I apologize that you have to sit here and you have to deal with that. Mr. Verma, what would you say about that?
Look, I appreciate your comments, Congressman Crow, and I am grateful that the chairman is interested in this issue. I am sorry that 6 staff members had to go to Nepal. I care a lot about South Asia. I think about the challenges we have in South Asia, and when I think about what could have been done, there was no stop in Bangladesh to talk about the recent election and human rights. There was no stop in Bhutan to talk about the recent election. There was no stop in Sri Lanka to talk about our competition with China. There was no stop in Maldives to talk about our new potential embassy and our competition with China. No stop in Mauritius to talk about our future of Diego Garcia. I think about the challenges that are coming across our desk each day in and around South Asia, and including with our partners in Nepal. It is not a $500,000 grant. And I will continue to work on this, Mr. Chairman, because I know you care about it. But I think this is indicative of the challenge that we're having, is that the biggest issues that we are facing are real and serious, and we want to engage with them on this committee, as I've talked to Congressman Mills about just recently, about what's happening in Haiti, what's happening around the world, and U.S. interests that are at stake.
So if you recognize, I'll give you an example. Chemonics International, DAI, Creative Associates, et cetera. I won't say which organizations, but there's organizations under your funding who has called me and asked for support because they couldn't get the State Department who funds them to help them to get out. Now, I understand your position, and I will let you answer. I apologize, Mr. Verma, I want to get my question out. I understand your position in regards to giving warnings to those in hostile and threatening positions, but these are actual Americans that your programs funded to put them over there that are now trapped and trying to seek a way out.
You know, Congressman, we make it very clear, and we have tens of thousands of grantees around the world, that receiving a grant from the United States is not guaranteed rescue in the event of a challenge. In fact, we want the grantees to have a plan so that they can actually get out. To the extent we can help them, we will try to do that, but it is not an obligation in our contracts. And in fact, we are quite clear, and I think the very good aid partners that we have around the world, all the big NGOs, they know exactly what they have to do to protect and support their people, and we are grateful for the incredible work that they do. And to the extent we can be helpful to them, we will.
Why wouldn't the State Department want to work in conjunction in a PPP-like scenario with organizations or individuals such as myself to support us, as opposed to, and maybe not in our situation and scenario, but in others, where the State Department has actually intentionally worked against us to try and get us stonewalled and slow-rolled on approvals? Why wouldn't we want to work together in a more copacetic way?
I think look, we talked the other night. We were trying to be helpful to you in what you were doing. What you're doing is very, very courageous. if something was to go wrong with your flight, I just want to be honest with you, we'd have to, some combination of the State Department and Defense Department would have to come and help you get out. If your helicopter, if your
But
plane
I just want to be
had
clear,
a
Mr.
problem,
Verma. My life is no more valuable than every other American.
You are
And
a
at the end of
member
the
of
day,
Congress.
Yes, elected by the people, and I'm their
Yeah.
employee, and I'll never forget that. Their life's just as important as
I'm
mine.
just saying.
I'm
there's
going
a
to cut you
rea-
both
there's a
off right
reality.
now because votes have begun about 10 minutes ago. The committee stands adjourned.